Right, a political reporter for The Guardian said on Sunday she doesn't believe the White House reporters have agreed to guidelines set out by the White House for future press conferences following its controversial decision to revoke CNN correspondent Jim Acosta's credentials. And according to her, I don't think anyone has agreed to the rules, but there's no reason for the White House to dictate the terms about how reporters do their job. And this is according to Sabrina Siddiqui, said on Clinton News Network's Reliable Sources show, whatever that is. I don't watch it. Now, the White House last week dropped its bid to rescind Acosta's hard pass following a contentious press conference with the president, and instead said it would enforce rules for future press events that limit the number of follow-up questions a reporter can ask if they are recognised by President Trump or the communication staff as being problematic. Well, if you're going to misbehave and you're not going to listen to the answers properly to the questions, then why should anyone tolerate people just being awkward and stupid? You know, we've had it ourselves in the Facebook group this week. People asking questions, they get given the answers, they don't like the answers, and when asked answers back or questions back, they refuse to answer. It's just crickets. And it's the same with these people. It's no different. You know, they just fire any kind of rubbish that they like, and then when they don't get the response they want, get rude and aggressive and start throwing all kinds of shit. Well, you know, Mr. Trump's no different to anyone else. If people are going to throw shit at you, some people are going to throw it back. And why should he tolerate these goons? Not one of them has got any integrity whatsoever. You know, they're not asking questions to find out information or details. They're raking muck. That's all they do. They're not journalists. Just drama queens. I would ban them all personally. And yet let them cry about, amendment this and amendment that. If they had any knowledge or intelligence, they'll realise we haven't even got any amendments. Coming off a rather heavy week of losses, not only did the stock market loss, although it has rebounded back because of interference in the right way. Bitcoin fell another 10% and went down to 3,447 as of Sunday. And this is the cryptocurrency's lowest level since September 2017. Over 7 days, Bitcoin has now lost more than 35% of its value in the past week. And this marks the biggest drop since April 2013, when it fell more than 44%. Now, the recent downturn started this time last year, and for those of you with long memories, we did say it would collapse. And it did. You know, it was roughly 20,000 this time last year, and we said it would plunge, and it's now down to 3,400 from 20,000 in 1 year, and I suspect it's going to go even further down. Now, of course, we also predicted that oil would start falling, and initially it didn't, which raised some concerns. But it's now gone down from $73 a barrel to $51. I suspect eventually we will reach the $25 to $29 a barrel period sooner rather than later. More high-level firings, this time the chairman of Mitsubishi Motors, after he was arrested last week over allegations that he underreported his income by millions of dollars. All right, for some, they've got away with it for so long, but it's not the case anymore. You know, this is one of probably hundreds now that have been arrested for this type of crime, another type of crime. And what you'll find, as we've said in the past, they're going to use the term fraud and corruption for a very broad range of criminality, and that generally are other crimes that have been kept away from the public. That they'll use the fraud and corruption one. And this crime carries a possible 10-year prison sentence for Carlos Ghosn, and 7 of the 8 members of the board of Mitsubishi, part of an industry alliance created by Ghosn that included Renault, held an extraordinary meeting on Monday to decide his fate, days after Nissan sacked him as chairman. And Mr. Ghosn, who allegedly also abused company assets for personal use, currently remains in detention in Tokyo, but has predictably denied the allegations, according to the Japanese media. General Motors, another one. We keep being told the economy's going great, and every week I'm mentioning another big name company that's collapsing, gone bankrupt, getting rid of staff, you name it. It's all coming apart, but it's all coming apart for them. And there's other issues behind this that are political. The General Motors, that's as far as I'll say at the moment. And then it's also announced that it will halt production at 5 North American facilities and cut 14,700 jobs as it deals with slowing sedan sales and the impact of Donald Trump's tariffs. They always blame Donald Trump. He's getting a bit like Russia. For those of you who are new and don't know, or those of you who have forgotten, the tariffs have nothing to do with America the country, or China the country, or America the government and China the government. These tariffs were almost like slush funds, or siphoning money out of both countries to the dragon groups. And that's what the transatlantic and trans-Pacific deals were involved in, including off-world trade, both of them. And both countries were being siphoned badly. So despite what the portal people tell you, what they're telling you is a pile of crap. Sorry. And eventually things will settle down and both countries will thrive and prosper. So more than 6,000 blue-collar jobs will be hit by GM plans to stop production at a car plant in Canada, and also 2 more in Ohio and Michigan. 2 transmission plants in the US will also be mothballed, putting the future of those plants in doubt. And the cuts will also include 15% of GM's 54,000 white-collar workforce, which is about 8,100 people. And it also comes as 18,000 GM workers have been asked to accept voluntary redundancy. Now, the move will also significantly reduce car production in North America as GM moves to stop building some low-selling car models. Mexico, yet again, the media portrays it as clashes between the American and Mexican government. Please ignore all that. Again, there's other interference that's nothing to do with the governments. And everything to do with private security groups. So Mexico plans to deport up to 500 people this week who tried to violently and illegally cross the border into America on Sunday. And this is according to the Interior Ministry. Dozens of people ran towards the border crossing between Tijuana and San Diego on Sunday, where US border officers had to use tear gas to repel them. And amid heated rhetoric from Donald Trump and confusion over a reported deal to keep asylum seekers in Mexico, all traffic was halted for several hours on Sunday at the busy border crossing. Now, the Custom and Border Protection said traffic in both directions was suspended at San Isidro port of entry before later allowing traffic through again. The migrants approaching the border were met with tear gas after a few tried to breach the fence separating the countries. The question remains as to why they were allowed to get that far after so many weeks of travel. They should have been turned back at the point of entry in Mexico, in my opinion. But yet again, it's nothing to do with what I understand as the government, and everything to do with rogue agencies and private security mercenary type groups. Now, US agents fired the tear gas, according to the Associated Press, at the scene, and officials arrested 42 migrants, which they're not, migrants that is, on the American side of the border on Sunday, and a Border Patrol official said claiming agents released tear gas only when attacked with rocks and other objects. And the US official also answered criticism of the use of gas on groups which the Portal people highlighted was only on women and children, which is also rubbish. And all the staged photos came out, and all the staged fake horror from the gullible public ensued after it. It's all theatre, it's all stage managed, all distraction. Now, they also made claims that saying the migrants pushed women and children towards the front, which again was not the case. And the arrest came amid clashes with members of a migrant caravan attempting to enter the US, and they fired back with tear gas. 42 were arrested across the border, and there was a further 39 arrests were reported on the Mexican side of the border. I suppose that'll keep running until they both countries get together government-wise and not only remove the rogue terrorist people and the children harvesting people, but also the mercenaries and the agencies that are giving them the money. Tensions between Moscow and Kiev have escalated this week after, according to the media, Russia fired on and seized 3 Ukrainian vessels and their crews in the Kerch Strait, which separates Crimea from the Russian mainland. The Russian Foreign Ministry accused Kiev of coordinating with the US and the EU in a planned provocation aimed at further securing anti-Moscow sanctions, as the Ukraine President, Mr. Poroshenko, asked Parliament to impose martial law. The UN Security Council prepared to later meet on Monday to discuss the incidents, and NATO joined a chorus of Western demands for the release of the vessels and the sailors, several of whom were injured, and calling for restraint. I'll have more on that later. A new number of international students enrolling at American universities and college has gone down by almost 7% in the last year, according to official data published this month. And it's the second year in a row that the number of new international enrolments in America has declined, which has now dented a market worth $42 billion to the American economy last year. Now, the survey, an expert on trends in international students, says there is little doubt this downturn, and here we go again, is related to the Trump administration. So now he's getting blamed for less students. You know, you have to laugh, don't you? These people. It's gone from everything's Russia's fault to everything's Trump's fault, you know. If only they'd realised how far down the scale governments and presidents and prime ministers really are, they'd realise how stupid they sound. It beggars belief. He also says it's a combination of anti-immigration messages putting off applicants and the tightening of the student visa system, which is the correct term of why it's gone down. You know, the visa application process was the single biggest disincentive, but also frequently cited was the social and political environment in America. Other issues that brought it up was the high cost of tuition was mentioned, but so too was feeling unwelcome in America and concerns about physical safety in America. Now, the biggest falls are from places such as India, South Korea, Mexico and Saudi Arabia, but there's also been a decline in numbers going to America from the UK, Germany and also France. So this is quite a downturn, because on a reversal of a pattern of growth that had lasted for decades. But I think what's really happening is people are finding out, and as the so-called lesser countries, and India in particular, their education is far superior, particularly for the higher caste people. Far superior to here, and Britain for that matter. You know, this is why they actually speak better English than people born there, including me. They're taught to a very high standard, and they have a number of programs there that are like vocational programs that could be of interest to America, where people are learning topics in the space of a few months and not spending 2, 3 and 4 years. It's a high yield learning curve. I wish I could remember the name of the program and the guy. I read about it about 5 or 6 years ago. But that's why India and parts of China have essentially taken over most of the markets, because they're much more cleverer than we are, because of their education program, and that's something we have to address, and quickly. We've got a shortage in vocational training, apprenticeships, in all levels of industry. A shortage of nurses. You know, a lot of nurses used to come from, and it's the same in the UK, from Pakistan and India and also the Middle East and Africa. But they're finding they can earn more and live in better conditions in their own country now. That's how far we've gone down. And it has to be corrected. Talking of nurses, any doctor or nurse employed at St. Louis Mercy Hospital will either be vaccinated against the flu or be terminated. That's poor terminology, that. I think by terminated they're meaning the employment and not killing them. Although you wouldn't know with the way things are going on now. And they will not take a religious or personal exemption excuse anymore, or allow them to wear a mask to avoid having the vaccination. Some people said, I'll wear a mask at work all day rather than have the vaccination. This particular hospital, St. Louis's, has decided no. Well, here's the solution. It's fairly simple. Is all staff walk out of the hospital. And I mean all staff. You know, people go, oh, what about my job and this and that? Well, most hospitals are vastly understaffed now anyway. There's thousands, tens of thousands of hospital jobs available. No one's taking them anymore. So they need to look after the staff they've already got. So if everyone walks out and tells and stop allowing these uneducated psychopaths to dictate your life, what can they do? What will or can they do when all the staff walk out? Nothing. Yes, they will use the guilt trip of the poor patients you are neglecting. But are they not neglecting the same patients by giving them vaccines and drugs? They have no idea whether it works, what it contains, or whether it's dangerous to the patients. So that argument they have is rendered mute. All staff walk out. Hospital closes. It has to. No staff. It'll soon come time for you all to come back. Only then you have the power. We're not having vaccinations. Period. To have the funds now and take over that hospital. This is what they are really frightened of. People power. And why they are desperate to block Kim releasing the funds to the people. Because they know full well we will roll back their stupidity, their stupid bureaucracy and their core pirate ways. And very quickly as well. Boycott that hospital. After all, it is a for-profit organisation. Washington. Some 4,300 Veterans Affairs workers have been demoted, fired and or suspended since Donald Trump took office. Oh my. Vice President Mike Pence told a room of veterans caregivers on this week, and Pence said it proves the president has taken decisive action to restore accountability to Veterans Affairs, at which that particular statement drew loud applause from the audience. Data from the VA shows that some 2,058 employees were removed, demoted or suspended in 2017 alone, and the majority of whom, roughly 1,500, were removed permanently. Now, in 2018, through the end of August, a further 2,299 were removed, demoted or suspended, of which the majority, 2,148, were removed. Suspensions were also part of that lasted 14 days or more, and some of the removals in 2018 were done during a probationary period. Back to Russia again. Russian forces in Crimea demanded Monday evening that the crews of two Ukrainian warships surrender within the hour or face an assault on their ships and the crew. And this was according to a Ukrainian official. 4 Russian Navy ships were in position around the Ukrainian ships at Sevastopol's harbour as they awaited a response to the surrender ultimatum. Ukrainian Defence Forces also told the BBC Russia it had set a 3 p.m. GMT deadline for Ukrainian soldiers in Crimea to surrender or be attacked across Crimea, but a Ukrainian spokesman could not confirm that order. Russian troops have encircled Ukrainian military bases throughout Crimea. Now, the standoff began over the weekend after Russian President Vladimir Putin was given approval by his parliament to send troops to Ukraine. Now, it may surprise you all, it may surprise some, or it may surprise all of you. What I've just read out is not a news piece from this week. What I've just read out was March the 3rd, 2014. Sound familiar? It's the 4-year loop time again. Many of you have now seen it. They're reporting old news again as new. The same clowns that were spouting BS and fear porn in the alt media are also coming out of the woodwork again with the same rubbish. How can it be? Almost a carbon copy story happens again live, and there was an incident this week. 4 years later. Why is it always 4 years? I don't think many people, when I put out the 4-year loop a couple of years ago, fully grasped it or believed it. Perhaps now you will, because it's in our faces. Right, that's the end of the news pieces for 2018 and also 2014. We're going to some Q&A. It's unbelievable, but I'm seeing more and more of it.